Well, good morning, you two lookers. Good morning, Abigail. I've got a story for you today. It is actually chapter 4, and I shall start for you. You're a bear? I couldn't believe it. That scaffy witch gave me a gammy spell. Mum roared loudly enough to rattle the castle stones. I knew we had to get out of there quickly. My father, the Bear King, would track Mum in no time. Mum stumbled out in the hall. She was graceless on her short bare legs, knocking things off the walls. We heard people coming. It was Dad and the Lords, looking for the bear they had just heard. Quick, I said to Mum, this way. In her confusion, Mum ran the wrong way. I tracked her down in Dad's trophy room, where the walls were covered with the heads of bears he had already hunted. But Mum wasn't looking at the bear heads. She was looking at my brothers. They were taking heads off the walls, and Mum was scolding them. Of course, Mum couldn't speak. All she could do was growl like a bear. Rawr. The funny thing was, those boys knew their mum, bear or not, and they did exactly what she told them. When I walked in, my brothers stared at me. A witch turned Mum into a bear. I explained as we ran into the hall. We got to get out of the castle. I need your help. I couldn't have asked for a better team. The triplets created a phantom bear by holding a roasted chicken in front of a torch. Who'd have thought of that? Its shadow looked just like a bear. The triplets used the shadow to lure Dads and the Lords away from Mum. The men followed the shadow bear all the way to the roof of the castle. Then the triplets locked them out. Next, my brothers fighting the maids from the kitchen, so Mum and I were free to make our escape. I grabbed the bow and headed for the door. But Mum hesitated. She didn't want to leave the boys. They'll be fine, I told her. You've got to hurry. I managed to push her out the door. I'll be back soon, I told my brothers. Go on and help yourself to anything you want as a reward. Then I hurried off after Mum. I took Mum to the ring of stones. I looked for the will of the wisps to lead us to the witch's cottage. Naturally, now that my mum was with me, they'd disappeared. I was standing right here and the wisp was right there, I told Mum. Then a whole trail of them led me off into the forest. I pointed and Mum said off into the woods. I could tell that even she'd never admit it. She had no idea where we were going. That didn't stop her from leading the way, though. Finally, we arrived someplace familiar. Mum, I cried, I know this place. The witch's cottage is close. I ran toward it, and Mum followed right behind me. Filled with hope, I opened the cottage door, but the witch was gone. Then I saw her cauldron. It was boiling and steaming. As I stared, I saw the image of the witch's face in the steam above the pot. The face in the cloudy vision seemed to be speaking as it nodded toward a clutter of vials. The face in the cloudy vision seemed to be speaking as it nodded toward a clutter. I can't say that word, I don't know why. Toward a clutter of vials. If you'd like to inquire about the pre-order, pour vial 1 into the cauldron. For store hours and shipping rates, vial 2. And if you're that red-headed lass, vial 3. Good morning, Brett. That message was for me. Quickly, I reached for the third vial and emptied it into the cauldron. The potion hissed and boiled into the great pot. Then the witch in the vision spoke again. Ah, the red-haired lass. I forgot to tell you, at the end of the second sunrise, the spell will be permanent unless you remember these words. Nightshade berries. Oops, I skipped a page. I listened carefully to the voice coming from the cauldron. It was a clue. Fate be changed and look inside, mend the bond torn by pride. I heard the clue, but what did it mean? There was just one thing I knew for sure. that Mum would be a bear forever if I could not find a way to undo the spell in 2 days' time. Frantic, I began looking for a way to get more clues to unravel the witch's riddle. I grabbed some potions and threw them into the cauldron. Instead of getting a better clue to change Mum back into herself, I thought, I got a hot cauldron. But before I knew it, the old pot seemed to overflow. Steam poured out, and I was suddenly standing in a thick, white fog. I couldn't see a thing. Then the white mist lifted. I began to see shapes around me. They were shapes from the cottage, but everything had been destroyed. The cottage was in ruins. The witch's misty face was gone. Mum and I looked at each other, then at the rubble all around. There was nothing to help us. We spent the night in the ruins. I woke to the sound of clinking dishes. Mum had found something to use as a table. She had also found a couple of chipped plates and placed forked twigs as utensils in the settings. Even as a bear, Mum was a proper queen. Then she started to eat a few berries she had put on the plate. I must say she was quite dainty about it for an enormous bear. There was only one problem. They're nightshade berries. They're poisonous, I said. Mum spat out the berries. She filled her cup with water from a nearby jar and took a swig. I looked into the jar. Where did you get this water? It has worms in it. Mum spit out the water and glared at me. I slung my bow over my shoulder. Come on. Down at the river, I shot a fish with my arrow. Bears love fish. But Mum made a face as I held it out to her. How do you know you won't like it unless you try it? I asked. She waved me off. I cooked the fish for her. She devoured it and asked for 2 more. Kind daughter that I was, I caught 2 more for her and cooked them. And then she wanted even more. A lot more. I told her to catch them herself. Mum had no idea how to catch a fish. I had to get on all fours and show her how to catch one in her mouth. After that, Mum was much better. She caught one and then another. Then we started to work together, both of us catching fish. It was the most fun I've had with Mum in ages. Suddenly, without a glance at me, Mum ambled off, walking on all fours. Hey, where are you going? I called. Mum didn't look back. I raced and caught up with her. I touched her and she turned. But I could tell by the sudden cold blackness in her eyes that she didn't recognize me. She sniffed me just like a real bear would do. Then she raised her paw. I thought she was going to swipe at me. Mum snapped out of it. She shook her head and stood up, and her eyes grew warm. Mum was back. But at that moment, it had me nervous. It was as if for a second, she had become a bear on the inside too. Just then, a blue light flashed nearby. A wisp, I cried. Mum dove after it, trying to catch it in her claws. Just calm down, I told her. Listen. We were silent. Sure enough, the whispers grew until the forest echoed with them. Then I saw the trail of wisps leading us deeper into the woods. They'll show us the way. Look, and there's the picture. I put it this way. And that is the end of chapter 4. Stay tuned for chapter 5.